of silent prayer, if you wish, each in your own way, followed by the set-aside prayer for those who care to join. I'm going to put that up on the screen. Moment of silence. God, please help us set aside everything we think we know about ourselves, alcoholism, AA, and even you, God. We ask for an open mind so we can have a new experience. Help us see the truth. Amen. Okay, this is from the foreword to the first edition. It says, "We of Alcoholics Anonymous are more than 100 men and women who have recovered from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body. To show other alcoholics precisely how we have recovered is the main purpose of this book. For them, we hope these pages will prove so convincing no further authentication will be necessary. We think this account of our experiences will help everyone to better understand the alcoholic. Many do not comprehend that the alcoholic is a very sick person, and besides, we are sure that our way of living has its advantages for all." My name's Chad Payne. I'm alcoholic, and I've been sober since April 2nd, 2003. Okay, so before we start, a little online etiquette. Everyone's audio is muted. So when sharing or making an announcement, we ask that you turn on your video so we can see your beautiful face. However, it's not a requirement. If you feel uncomfortable showing your face online, we will still allow you to share. The recording feature has been turned off to honor our principle of anonymity. Welcome everybody to the online version of the regular Wednesday night open Big Book study meeting of the primary purpose group of Alcoholics Anonymous. This is an open meeting, and as such, all who have an interest in alcoholism and our program of recovery are welcome. Because this is an open meeting, you don't have to identify yourself nor your reason for being here if you don't wish to do so. Your anonymity will be protected. We ask that you protect ours. While this is an open meeting, membership in AA is limited to those who have a serious drinking problem and a desire to stop drinking for good. Okay, our seventh tradition states that each group ought to be fully self-supporting through their own contributions. If this is your first meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous, we ask that you be our guest. We're glad you're here and hope you come back and become a part of our lives. On the other hand, if this is a regular meeting for you and you can handle a couple of bucks, it really helps out as we only meet once a week. We're doing donations through Venmo. So just in case somebody doesn't know how to use it, you hit the menu button on the top left, select search people, and we are primary purpose at Group Austin. The important part is at Group Austin. Okay, some announcements. We do a weekly email. If you'd like to get on the list to get that email, go to austinppg.org and contact the webmaster through the link at the bottom of the homepage. It's actually at the top of the homepage now. And if you have done that and you're still not getting the email, we only send one a week and it usually comes on Tuesday. And if you're not getting that email, check your spam folder. And if you're not getting them there, well, then send me an email at my email address here in my box. Not a chat, but an email. And oh my God, somebody put chipmunk in the chat box. Charlie, yeah, your voice sounded so funny on that. Okay, anyway, send me an email. We'll make sure you get on the list. Okay, the next announcement, we do a foundation meeting. It says here on the website, austinppg.org, we have a recording of the foundation meeting. If you're new to AA or new to our group and have not listened to this meeting, we highly encourage you to check it out. It's a great introduction to what Alcoholics Anonymous and our group is all about. Freedom from alcoholism through the application and practice of the 12 steps as they were given us. I highly encourage that to anybody that hadn't heard it yet. Go to austinppg.org and just follow the links for the foundation meeting and check that thing out. It's good stuff. Ashley, was there something from last night's group conscious that we were going to announce this meeting?
We're gonna announce the
Scribe.
thank you for the Venmo contributions, because we do still have a lot of expenses for the virtual room, and
Oh, we
then
were going to talk about what that was costing us and that stuff.
well,
Okay,
we were
so
just gonna, we do have expenses, obviously. We'll
yeah,
provide.
so we talked about this last night, and we're not hurting for money in any way. We're collecting plenty of money, but just to let you guys know where that money's going, our Zoom account is $110 a month. Is that right? Okay, about $110 a month, and it's because we have the account that allows us to have up to 1,000 people in the room. It was really cool when 500 wasn't enough, and we had to move it up to 1,000. Our numbers went down just a little bit since we moved it to Wednesday night, and we may knock it back down to 500 and save a little money. But anyway, we just kind of want to be transparent about where that money's going, and then whatever we have left over, we of course spend it also on the Tuesday night meeting that's meeting at the church, and then what's left over from that we kick up through the service structure. So we just want to kind of be transparent with you guys and let you know where the money's going when you donate.
And then Chad, weren't we going to talk about a scribe, or are you going to do that later?
I think
Yeah.
Ashley's just going to handle that.
Okay.
Okay. Um, Somebody here is looking for a sponsor. If you came here tonight without a sponsor, there's no reason to leave without a sponsor. It doesn't cost a dime, and it's part of what we do to stay sober. Is if there's anyone tonight looking for a sponsor, send me an email, and we'll get you hooked up with somebody. I'll get to those emails tomorrow. We'll get you set up with somebody. Um, don't put it in the chat because I won't see it probably, or I'll forget or something. Send me an email at this email address, and we'll get you set up with somebody. Okay. Next. Before we begin our study of the Big Book, we'll review Tradition 9. And Steve's not here tonight. Let's see, who we got? Ashley, will you read the ninth tradition?
Yeah.
You have it read? I'll do the waiting room while you're doing that. So Ashley's going to read the ninth tradition, long form and short form. So the short form starts on page 562 in the fourth edition.
Okay. Ashley, alcoholic. Ninth tradition, AA as such ought never be organized. We may create service boards or committees directly responsible to those they serve. And long form is each AA group needs the least possible organization. Rotating the leadership is best. The small group may elect its secretary, the large group its rotating committee, and the groups of the large metropolitan area and their central or intergroup committee, which often employs full-time secretary. The trustees of the General Service Board are, in effect, AA, General Service Committee. They are custodians of our AA tradition and the receivers of voluntary AA contributions by which we maintain our AA General Service Office in New York. They are authorized by groups of handling over our public relations. They are guaranteed the integrity of their principals and newspapers. The AA Grapevine, all such representatives are to be guided in the spirit of service for true leaders in AA, but are trusted, experienced servants of the whole. They derive no real authority from their titles. They do not govern. Universal respect is the key to their usefulness.
Okay, nice job. Okay, in the spirit of the 12 traditions, our group conscience has elected to use a Big Book study guide to help us stay focused on our study of the AA Big Book. There are one or more questions for darn near every sentence in the basic text. The chairperson will read a question, and then a member will read the related sentence. It's okay to comment more than once in here, but please stay focused on the text at hand. So this is important. It's something we do kind of different at this meeting in case you're new to what we're doing here. It says, rather than share our experience with the reading, we try to share on what our founders were saying, what it means, and why they're saying it now. So most AA meetings, we share our experience, strength, and hope. But at this meeting, we try to leave our experience out of it and just focus on discussing what the book is saying. If comments get too general or begin to drift off track, it's the responsibility of the chairperson to redirect the discussion. So here's how to share. Select participants at the bottom of the screen, select more, and then select raise your hand, and a little blue hand will go up by your face. And then we'll call on them basically in order. We've got a couple different lists we're going by, but we'll have to call on you. Please be patient. This is still a work in progress. And the last thing, we have a 1936 Webster's Dictionary here. If you want to see what a word means or what it meant at the time they were writing the big book, send Ashley a chat, send me one, and we'll get the definition of it. Okay, so Katie, did we get Charlie? Oh, good. Yes, you're back to normal.
Oh, good. I wish I could have heard it.
Oh, it was great.
Actually, I was hitting on a helium balloon while I was logging on.
That's what it sounded about like.
Okay, are we starting?
Yes, you want to tell us about what we read last week?
Heck yeah, we're in a great part of the book where Dr. Silkworth we're on triple X in the fourth edition, XXX in the doctor's opinion, and he went over 5 different types of alcoholic, and then we got to number 5 where it said the types that are entirely normal in every respect except the effect alcohol has on them. They're often able, intelligent, friendly people, and we're probably all number 5s here. I would imagine, but let's keep reading. And we touched on this last week. It's the thing that all these alcoholics have in common. We're going to cover in these next 2 paragraphs, and which is kind of the thrust and the drive of him describing all these types, is that no matter what type of people came in front of him, they all had this in common. So, Chad, why don't you start with all these and go to the bottom of the page?
All these and many others have one symptom in common. They cannot start drinking without developing the phenomenon of craving. This phenomenon, as we have now suggested, may be the manifestation of an allergy, which differentiates these people and sets them apart as a distinct entity. It has never been, by any treatment with which we are familiar, permanently eradicated. The only relief we have to suggest is entire abstinence. This immediately precipitates us into a seething cauldron of debate. Much has been written pro and con, but among physicians, the general opinion seems to be that most chronic alcoholics are doomed.
P9A in the study guide. Are there even more types, closet others?
All these and many others.
What's the common denominator of each and every type?
Have one symptom in common. They cannot start drinking without developing the phenomenon of craving.
What is the one thing that sets alcoholic men and women apart from all other people?
This phenomenon, as we have suggested, may be the manifestation of an allergy, which differentiates these people and sets them apart as a distinct entity.
Which treatment has been successful in treating alcoholics?
It has never been, by any treatment with which we are familiar, permanently eradicated.
What is the only relief from alcoholism?
The only relief we have to suggest is entire abstinence.
It says that the alcoholic never takes the first drink. He can never crave the second, then the third, then the fourth, then the fifth, then the next fifth, and then the next fifth. In spite of all the attention paid to alcoholism, what is the general consensus of physicians regarding alcoholics back then? 2 sentences.
This immediately precipitates us into a seething cauldron of debate. Much has been written pro and con, but amongst physicians, the general opinion seems to be that most chronic alcoholics are doomed.
That's a bad diagnosis. You don't want your doctor saying doomed, and I think the reason Silkworth thought this was such a big deal is because in 1939, I love how he talks about with all their ultra modern methods and stuff, but they were getting a 3% success rate with us back then. And so he was seeing bigger numbers than that after that. Okay, any comments on what we read there?
All right, let's start it off with Chip. I'm trying to get to you, but my screen dances around with the waiting room. Okay.
Hi, I'm Chip. I'm alcoholic. We talked about the effect produced by alcohol. Some of this is hindsight, so it's hard not to talk about my experience. But I think what are alcoholics? We're spiritual sensitives. We're intuitively know it's like, wow, there's great power in this. I didn't realize, but once I took a drink of alcohol, it immediately cuts me off from God. I didn't realize that, so I got a relationship with nothing, a mystical lie. It's not true. It's not real. It's not there. It's nothing. And I could do anything on that stuff. I thought it's like, wow, I'm like college over alcohol. Sheesh, that is my power, and it makes life a whole lot more manageable. I can literally go through hell on that stuff, but it appears to work, and it's messing with the power of identity. I was telling you who and what I was, what I am, but I didn't think so, But the reason I could do anything on that stuff is because I could be anything on that stuff. It gave me that false ego. It's like, I'm the greatest, coolest scum of the earth. My pride and my fear will bounce back that instantaneously. And it's so elusive, I don't know what to do, but I want to keep that contact with it. And so that allergy manifests. It's like, I need my power source. And all hell breaks loose eventually. Because at first we start relying on the lie to tell us who and what we are. We're not too far away from the truth at first, but then as we get further and further away, it can't stand the test of time, and it gets revealed. It's like, man, this stuff can't work. It won't work. It really can't work. It just appears to work. That's an illusion and stuff. And I was quite doomed until I ran to Alcoholics Anonymous and let go of a lot of old ideals, and I'm very grateful for that. And all these people that wrote this book and all this stuff. And I think Silkworth was divinely inspired to help us out. Anyway, thanks for sharing.
Thanks, Chip. Nice job.
I think Myers has his hand up.
Yeah, I can't get to when there's people in the waiting room, it moves me down and I can't see okay. Yeah, I see Myers there. All right, well, next up is.
I got Myers unmuted, sorry.
Thank you. Thank you, guys. Like a well-oiled train wreck. That's just perfect. Hey, good evening, y'all. I just wanted to make a really quick observation. Every time I read into this piece, sometimes I had a hard time understanding why Silkworth felt the way that he did, and some of the comments that he makes in the doc's opinion. When it came out several years ago with the book called Slaying the Dragon, a deal by William White, and the only reason I mentioned it was because there's a bunch of pictures in there of asylums and places where chronic alcoholics went to finish out their ordeal, and it was horrific. I mean, I'm talking, it was like almost made me sick at my stomach watching these pictures. We just sort of take it for granted these days. You get loaded, you get labeled alcoholic. They got treatment for you. They got hospitals. They got all kinds of stuff to help you with. We got a great program laying in front of us that's guaranteed to help. But we're talking like a year before Silkworth wrote this stuff. If you were labeled a chronic alcoholic, they would put you in these asylums where you would spend the rest of your life. And there were tens of thousands of people that killed themselves at their own hands because living there was so horrendous. I don't ever want us to take this stuff for granted. I want us to realize that the sacrifices that these cats made were really pretty special. Thank y'all.
Thanks, Myers. Good stuff. That sounds awful. Denise.
Hi, everybody. My name's Denise. I am an alcoholic. Nice to be here. One of the things I keep seeing over the past couple of weeks leading up to this is all the references about powerlessness, especially, on XXIX. this is repeated over and over again, and we talked about that being the definition of insanity. Dr. Silfork says that there's nothing more that, and other doctors and psychiatrists say that there's nothing more that they can do. And you guys even jumped forward to 26 and talked about Jung's, and he talks about the powerlessness. And what I'm seeing in this is how, when Bill's writing this, and as Dr. Silkworth is writing this opinion, it's constantly emphasized about the powerlessness, and it's not just our powerlessness. When I see them doing this, it's everybody is powerless. This is a disease that nobody can fix. It not only is not prejudiced on who it goes after or resides in, but nobody else can fix it either. And I like the constant referencing to powerlessness from the different things. Another thing that Bill and the group saw was so important for our brain, our built-in forgetter, and seeing that, you know, somehow if they don't get it here, they're going to get it here. So I know others have said basically the same thing about other things, but lately what I'm seeing is how everyone in regards to alcoholism is powerless, and how, and it just reminds me, my two cents on this is, it reminds me how grateful I am to be where I'm at. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Denise. Good stuff. Next up is Kurt.
Hey, Alcoholic Kurt, grateful to be here. Where something is in the book, I have been taught and continue to be taught, is critical. The context of where it is. If the solution to alcoholism was don't drink, which is what we hear over and over and over again in my neck of the woods in AA land, our book would say the only relief we have to suggest is entire abstinence. In the context of where that sentence is placed, what I've been taught and have experienced is I got to look at the next paragraph. What immediately precipitates us into a seething cauldron of debate? What immediately leads us into that cauldron of debate is that the only relief we have to suggest is entire abstinence. This is coming from physicians. Much has been written pro and con hopelessness. I'm doomed to an alcoholic death, even if I'm offered that the only solution is entire abstinence. Thank goodness that there's good news coming real soon, real soon. So again, don't drink. Telling me to not drink, or telling an alcoholic to not drink, it's insanity. I need something with depth and weight, and I'll stop there. Thanks so much.
Good stuff. Thank you. All right. How about, Lil, quit jumping around. There we go.
Hi, everybody. My name is Lil, and I am alcoholic.
Hi, Lil.
So good to be here. And I'll just, I'll tap on to what has already been said, and it is that seething cauldron of debate. If they knew they couldn't tell an alcoholic not to drink, because if you're a chronic alcoholic, you cannot not drink. Life goes into the tubes, and hence, you know, it would be fine. Just don't drink and have a happy life. That is not a chronic alcoholic. And that in terms of doomed, and the big book, it refers to that several places in the ABCs, that probably no human power could have relieved our alcoholism. And it doesn't say could have relieved our drinking. It says could have relieved our alcoholism. And on page 45 in We Agnostics, where it says to be doomed to an alcoholic death or to live on a spiritual basis are not always easy alternatives to face, because we want another option. If you're like me, I wanted another option. And what does that actually mean? Living on a spiritual basis means a whole different thing, right? And it doesn't mean just not drinking. And I think I'll end there. Thanks for asking me.
Thanks, Lil.
A few definitions, if I can jump in, Chad.
I don't know.
Okay.
Go
Well, I'll start with relief. So relief That which removes or lessens evil, pain, that gives aid or comfort. Doom is judgment, destiny, or fate, usually in unhappy, ruin, or death. Chronic is continuing for a long time of disease of a long duration. And then abstinence is habitual abstaining from intoxicating beverages.
I love the way they have to talk to us. I mean, you can't just tell one of us what it requires abstinence. You have to go, no, Charlie, entire abstinence. You know, it's like not even a little non-habit forming marijuana.
Well, you know, Katie, alcoholic, one of the things I just wanted to throw in there is, you know, this is on XXX and it says entire abstinence. And sometimes, and this is controversial, but I'm doing it anyway. Sometimes we say, you know, we talk too much about God. You're like, good God, you're not 6 pages into the book and they're telling you you can't drink at all. That's a big deal. You know, the God thing is just like, whatever. But, you know, it's funny how we can weigh out the way it says in the book, and we don't want to scare the new guy off by entire abstinence. Like, yeah, you gotta tell him like it is, because the first step is hopelessness. It's not hope, it's absolute hopelessness, period. We want you to be depressed and feeling bad so that you'll turn it around and come this way. And then the hope can come later. That's all I got.
Good stuff, Katie.
Mm-hmm.
Kirk?
Good evening, everybody. My name's Kirk, and I am a grateful recovered alcoholic. I'm happy to be back with you guys this evening, and thank you for those definitions. And when I'm looking at the word relief, that last sentence, you know, my sponsor has been big with me, and it's almost like grammar school, going through this book with him sometimes, right, and talking about what's here and why is it here. And so when I look at this page, I got to take that word relief in context. The relief, there's an implied direct object for the relief, and that's the phenomenon of craving. The only relief to the phenomenon of craving, to the physical nature of our disease, is entire abstinence. Not the relief for alcoholism is entire abstinence, right? Because we agreed on XXIX that unless this person can experience an entire psychic change, there is very little hope of his recovery. So what Dr. Silkworth is telling us here is that to relieve or have the phenomenon of craving lessen, we have to practice entire abstinence. But that's not the solution to alcoholism. And he asked that question on the next page, and I'm not going to jump ahead because there's a lot written in the book about what the solution to alcoholism is, but I thought it was prudent to point out that entire abstinence is not the solution to alcoholism. Entire abstinence is what relieves us of the phenomenon of craving, which ensures that we cannot control how much we take after we ingest substance alcohol. And I think that's important to note, especially with the new guys that I work with. We're not talking about not drinking here. We're talking about developing a relationship with the God of our understanding to have a psychic change. The byproduct just happens to be sobriety one day at a time. Thanks for letting me share.
Did you want to do 2 more paragraphs?
I think we should roll into it.
Okay, so if your hand's still up, if your hand's up right now, just leave it up. We're going to go ahead and read 2 more paragraphs, and then we'll keep going on the hands. Okay.
The top of 31.
What is the solution? Perhaps I can best answer this by relating one of my experiences. About 1 year prior to this experience, a man was brought in to be treated for chronic alcoholism. He had but partially recovered from a gastric hemorrhage and seemed to be a case of pathological mental deterioration. He had lost everything worthwhile in life and was only living, one might say, to drink. He frankly admitted and believed that for him there was no hope. Following the elimination of alcohol, there was found to be no permanent brain injury. He accepted the plan outlined in this book. 1 year later, he called to see me. and I experienced a very strange sensation. I knew the man by name and partly recognized his features, but there all resemblance ended. From a trembling, despairing, nervous wreck had emerged a man brimming with self-reliance and contentment. I talked with him for some time, but was not able to bring myself to feel that I had known him before. To me, he was a stranger, and so he left me. A long time has passed with no return to alcohol.
P1, how does Dr. Silkworth demonstrate the solution to chronic alcoholism? Read 2 sentences, please.
What is the solution? Perhaps I can best answer this by relating one of my experiences.
This will be easy. What was the solution to the first alcoholic's dilemma? Read the whole paragraph.
Oh, thanks. 1 year prior to this experience, a man was brought in to be treated for chronic alcoholism. He had but partially recovered from a gastric hemorrhage and seemed to be a case of pathological mental deterioration. He had lost everything worthwhile in life and was only living, one might say, to drink. He frankly admitted and believed that for him there was no hope. Following the elimination of alcohol, there was found to be no permanent brain injury. He accepted the plan outlined in this book. 1 year later, he called to see me, and I experienced a very strange sensation. I knew the man by name and partly recognized his features, but there all resemblance ended. From a trembling, despairing, nervous wreck had emerged a man brimming over with self-reliance and contentment. I talked with him for some time, but was not able to bring myself to feel that I had known him before. To me, he was a stranger, and so he left me. A long time has passed with no return to alcohol. So
that's the patient he's talking about there is Hank Parkhurst, who was one of the fundamental figures in writing the book early on, and he wrote the chapter to employers.
And isn't his story The Unbeliever in the first edition?
I believe so.
It's a really interesting story, The Unbeliever. It starts out with just it's not complete sentences. It's just kind of his train of thoughts as he's lying in the hospital bed sober. If you haven't, if you've never read it, you ought to check it out. I think it's like the 3rd story or something in the first edition. So we're going to keep calling on people as we go down the list, and when we come to you, you're welcome to share on what we read in the first 2 paragraphs or what we read in these last 2. Stephen?
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
I'm Stephen Long, grateful recovered alcoholic. How y'all doing? Man, grateful to be here, man. It's good to see y'all. Man, anytime we're in doctor's opinion, what hits me, man, is identification. I think that this is, I don't think that there's any mistake here. And at least for me, what I'm reading here is all about identification. Super grateful, man, for Silkworth and individuals that came before us, man, laid the stones on this path in the minute of my life that utilize this text and turn a cool little exercise of turning statements into questions, having an experience with that and finding out if I even belong here. And it starts here, man. I know we talked about that over on Romans 28 and 27, turning statements into questions, but this stuff that we just read, and I'm going to be quick, Katie, I promise. This stuff that we just read on Roman numeral 30, man, great identification piece, right? All these and many others have one symptom in common. Can Stephen start drinking without developing the phenomenon of craving? Question mark. Is that my experience? And we've talked about that on page 20, 28 and 29. Excuse me, I said 26 and 27. 28 and 29, Roman numeral. We talked about what that stuff looks like. When I put it in my system, can I control the amount I take once I take one? I think that's very important. I don't think I think the book's intent is for that. So I can understand what's wrong with me when alcohol is in my system. It says that this differentiates Stephen, sets him apart as a distinct entity. And it says that, Stephen, man, the only thing that you're going to be able to do is entire abstinence, just not drink. And then it goes in, what an amazing thing we just read, right? How powerful is that, man? It just lined out a story for us, man, that gave us some hope in the middle of seeing some stuff that, for me, coming up on just not drinking. I know We talked a little bit about that, just not drinking anymore. Katie just mentioned it. Man, that's a heartbreaker, even though it's been breaking my heart for so long, even though I've been finding myself in a position with alcohol in my system, not being able to control it and pushing my whole life away, no matter how much I love it, man. It's a heartbreaker. So it gives us this, right? This story, Silkworth gives us this story and lets us know that, man, there is a way out if we continue this process. And we haven't really started talking about that too much. And I think there's a purpose for that too. I do want to do one little, and I told you I was going to be quick, but identification. And I'm going to say something that might be controversial. I don't know. I do think that there's a lot of individuals in the fellowship that never really identified and utilized this practice of turning statements into questions and don't really know what's wrong with them. And that's my experience working with guys. And super, super grateful to have paragraphs like this to go through and say, hey, man, absolutely, man, when I put alcohol in my system, I lose control over the amount I take. And that was very freeing for me. I want to do a little exercise here real quick. For whoever can see me on their screen, because there's a lot of cool stuff that we're about to cover in the rest of the recovery text, but I do want to do this real quick. Here's my big book. This is First Step. I'll see that for whoever can see on my page. That's First Step. Okay. This is 11 steps. They're about the same size. I think it's important for us to realize that. I think the book really drives that home in the next 4 chapters. That first step, I really have to identify. If I'm not identifying with the first step, if I'm not identifying with the disease of alcoholism, from a physical allergy to mental obsession, which we're not talking about yet, so I apologize for jumping forward. If we're not identifying with that, the rest of the work, man, is just not necessary, right? I have to identify with this disease before I move forward, or else it's null and void. And again, I think there's a lot of individuals hanging out that don't know what that means. Thank God for meetings like PPG and the individuals that were armed with facts about themselves that sat down with me and let me know what that looks like. Super grateful to be in Doctor's Opinion. Thank you. That's all I got.
We don't mind you sharing for a long time. We just want you to try to bring some enthusiasm into it.
I'm excited, man. I'm excited about it.
Okay, I might pronounce this wrong. Let's see, Rissa or Risa? I'm going to go with Rissa. We'll see. And Ryan.
I am Risa.
Oh, darn it.
It's like Lisa with an R. On page 31, it says, despite all we can say, many who are real alcoholics are not going to believe they are in that class. By every form of self-deception and experimentation, they will try to prove themselves exceptions to the rule, therefore non-alcoholic. And we're reading in the Doctor's Opinion, and, as we've talked about before, it talks about we need complete psychic change. I don't love that so much when I first coming in. And then after it talks about that we need to do entire abstinence. So I don't love that either too much. And so we go over these types of alcoholics, and I just love there's so many places in the big book where, I'll be reading it and I'll just be like, nope, not me, not me, not me. And then I read a sentence like, then there are types or not that one. All these and many others have one symptom in common. They cannot start drinking without developing the phenomenon of craving. Like, I can go through all those types and just be like, nope, that's not me. And then, busted right after that. Like, you don't have to fit these completely. And then, the same thing happens on 22, right after it talks about the real alcoholic, that this is by no means a comprehensive picture of the true alcoholics as our behavior patterns vary. So it's great. Stephen just talked about identification. And, I sit here trying not to identify constantly. And, just throughout this book, the doctor writes and Bill writes, and it just kind of slams home like, yeah, you might not fit this completely, but let's look at this next paragraph, and you're still in there. So thank you for letting me share.
Thanks, Teresa. Nice job. Okay. Ray Shepherd.
I'm Ray Shepard. I'm a recovered alcoholic. Bill introduces the doctor's opinion by saying we're going to be interested in the medical estimate of the plan of recovery. And then Silkworth immediately launches into this letter, and he says, I attended a man whom I consider of the type as being hopeless. And so when we start talking about the hopelessness of these alcoholics, I go to page 25 when Bill even said that we authors had come to believe in the hopelessness and futility of life as we had been living it. Silkworth describes that in his chapter as he describes the problems that we alcoholics have in attempting to control our drinking as well as to control our abstinence, which we can't. This is even pointed out on Roman numeral 29. This guy that comes in and said, Doc, you got to help me. I can't stop drinking, and I got everything to live for. I can't. I talk about hopelessness. And so as he describes all of these alcoholics on page 30, there's one type that he is pointing to, and that is the chronic alcoholic, as Bill's going to call it, the real alcoholic. And that's what this book is written for, that one specific type of alcoholic. And there are many that are going to say, well, I'm not like that. And I have to add that little 3-letter word at the end of that sentence and say, yet. You may not have reached it yet. We'll get to describe that when we get to page 24, because Bill's going to tell us that's happened long before we even think that it's happened. So Silkworth, in this chapter, up to this time and point, he's giving us his observations. He's observed thousands of alcoholics who just can't keep their word. And now he's going to tell us the one thing that we don't want to hear, but we already know: we're doomed. Now he's going to tell us his opinion. That's where I think that we're leading to on Roman numeral 31 and 32, because this is his opinion, his experience, which I think is rather interesting, because as we look at the program of recovery, that's what it's based on. It doesn't matter what we hear, doesn't matter what we say, doesn't matter what we think. It's only what we do. And so he's describing then the experiences of these two that he's going to outline here on these pages, where one accepts the plan that's outlined in the book, the other becomes sold on the ideas that are contained in this book. And so his opinion is, read the book. So it's interesting as we're launching into the study of the book, exactly how this sets the tone for the next chapters that we're going to cover. Thank you.
Thanks, Ray. Good stuff. And it is interesting. He says, what is the solution? And it almost seems to me like Silkworth is saying, I really don't get what the solution is, but let me just tell you what I saw. And then he tells this story. He tells another story that we'll get to next week. But I want to say, before we go any further, I just want to kind of back up a little bit and just say, I love the detail we've been getting into in this meeting, and I love I hear so many people say it in so many different ways, and it's so interesting. But just to give the real simple version of what's going on right now in this doctor's opinion is, alcoholics, what we all have in common, we got two problems. Charlie likes to do his fists like this. We got two problems. One of those problems happens when I drink. When I start to drink, I lose control over how much I drink. As an alcoholic, that's the first problem. The book calls it a physical allergy. I call it an alcohol problem. But whatever you want to call it, I would suggest going by what the book calls it, not what I call it. But whatever it is, it's that I lose control over how much I drink once I start. And there's a real simple solution for that. Don't start. Which brings up problem number 2 for the alcoholic, which, problem 1's a big problem, but problem 2 is an even bigger problem. Problem 2 is that I'm not able to entirely abstain from alcohol. I'm not able to do what I'm required to do to keep from kicking off this craving, which is just don't take a drink. If you're allergic to peanuts, don't eat peanut butter. Problem solved. But for the alcoholic who is allergic to alcohol, the solution is don't drink alcohol, but the alcoholic is unable to do that. So in that sense, the chronic alcoholic is doomed because he's unable to do what they're asking him to do here. But then now he's kind of moving over here into, but check this out. I've seen some crazy things. Let me tell you about one of them. And then next week we're going to talk about another one unless we get to it tonight. But we're going to start to see that there's a solution for alcoholism that goes way beyond just not drinking. If you go through this and listen to his description, it's like Dr. Silkworth is really trying to stress to us that if you do what this book says to do, you have an experience that goes way beyond just not drinking anymore. And we were talking about this last night in the regular meeting, what it looks like when you have a spiritual solution. There are solutions out there that are not spiritual in nature for people with a drinking problem, and they're all geared around just not drinking anymore. And they don't look like this. They don't look like I become a new man. You know, I change internally. There's a huge change in me, and part of it is that I don't have to drink anymore. So to say that there's more available in AA than sobriety is a huge understatement. What's available in Alcoholics Anonymous is that if I do what this book is saying, I go from this guy who's lost everything worthwhile in life and only living to drink, and to becoming a new person in so many ways. So that's what's available for this guy who one page over is doomed based on the doctor's opinion.
Trembling, despairing, nervous wreck.
Yep. Okay, Mariah.
Did that work? Am I unmuted?
You're good.
Thank you, Chad. Thank you, Chad. Mariah, alcoholic. A couple weeks ago and a couple pages ago on Roman numeral 28, the paragraph that says the message which can interest and hold these alcoholic people must have depth and weight. And then we've had these couple of pages and couple of weeks about the depth of weight, the depth and the weight of it. And in tonight's, we cannot stop. We cannot stop. We have one symptom in common. And I may not be type 1 through 5. I may be a different type. But there he catches me. All these and many others have one symptom in common. I cannot start drinking without developing the phenomenon of craving. And I love that. Entire abstinence, it's like really dead. Like we don't need to use the word entire in front of abstinence, but we need to hear it that way. I love that. And, depth and weight, doomed. He stops the bottom of page 30 with the word doomed. We are just doomed. And, thanks for the definition, ruin and death. The top of that one also was, it talked about the supreme sacrifice of death or suicide. And, when do we get to the solution? Like I have to identify with the pathetic part of these first pages. And then we switch to the solution. And I'm so glad he's got that. The guy who was trembling, despairing, nervous wreck turns into a man brimming over with self-confidence and contentment. And Alcoholics Anonymous is a transformation. It's not just separate me from the physical thing so that the phenomenon of craving won't start. It's a change my entire psychic person. So thank you. Pass.
Thank you. Good stuff. Ashley's got some definitions in the chat in case you haven't seen them. Charlie, we got 8 minutes left.
I don't think we can do it.
I don't either. Okay.
I was going to try to finish this chapter tonight, but
I don't think we'd be able to share on it.
Yeah.
All right, Richard.
Richard, recovered alcoholic. Thanks for the meeting. It was great. I think the thing that I did not want to read when I got to AA was that I would have to stop. The only relief was entire abstinence. And it talks about that craving right above it is that we have one symptom in common, that once we start drinking we develop that phenomenon of craving. So craving starts after the first drink. And page 17 through 23 really gets into the craving after the first drink, once I put alcohol in my system. And of course, 23 through 43 about the craving and obsession once I have nothing in my body at all. And also, it says on page 19, right in there, we feel the elimination of our drinking is but a beginning. And it's a design for living that has no bounds. That's the beauty of it. There is no end to the spiritual growth that we can have. That's a phenomenal thing to know, whether you're 19 days sober or 19 years or 50 years. And I thought that was interesting when it said that he was brimming over with self-reliance. And later on in the book, they say self-reliance failed us. So that's it. Thanks for the meeting.
Thanks, Richard. Good stuff. Okay. Barry.
Hello, my name's Barry. I'm an alcoholic. And it's good to be here. And man, I love just so much of what I've heard tonight. I especially love what Charlie was saying about entire abstinence and the need to actually stop this. There are a lot of people, and usually these are people who have some issue with the program itself, who like to criticize and tear apart the big book. But man, especially if you're reading this, and we've discussed this before, I love the way that the doctor's opinion is just so honest with you from the very start. The way that it emphasizes you're going to have a spiritual experience of some type. This spiritual experience will involve your altruism, involve you caring about someone else and reaching out to someone else in order to help them. And this part that we just read about the gentleman who comes in, who seems, what it says here, in a fairly short amount of time is recovered. It's really important for me to remember the historical context this was written. Like, this is 1935. So the Great Depression has been going on for about 5 or 6 years so far. In 1939, when this is published, man, they're sitting there and they're going into movie theaters and they're watching these newsreels about the rise of fascism in Germany, the rise of war in Japan and East Asia. These people did not live in a place in which there was a ton of social programs. This gentleman, there's not a health insurance company paying for him to go to a treatment center. When these people sit there and they tell you that there was hope and there was love restored to them and a solution found, these are people who understood what hitting bottom really meant. Earlier, that gentleman was talking about the asylums that alcoholics are convicted to. And, a few years ago, they released the documentary about the life of Bill W. And I'll tell you, still to this day, the thing that I really get out of that documentary was when it talked about what life was for an alcoholic before Alcoholics Anonymous and what that was. Knowing the context in which these people live gives their words power. Thanks.
It's interesting. Good stuff, Barry. Okay, Larry.
Hi, everybody. My name's Larry Cassidy. I'm an alcoholic.
Hey, Larry. Good to see you on here.
Good to see you, Charlie. This has a little bit to do with our conversation today, Charlie. I was looking, the 3 words that stuck out to me tonight was pathological mental deterioration. Pathological is a behavior of powerful feelings that control us, that take over our lives. So to me, what they're saying there is pathological mental deterioration means that I'm having these powerful obsessions and these powerful thoughts that are taking over my life. I can't control them. Going back to what the fellow was talking about earlier tonight, the only relief we have to suggest is entire abstinence. I am so glad that he and others in Alcoholics Anonymous point out that they're talking about the physical craving there. They're not talking about untreated alcoholism, because we have men and women sitting in meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous today that are dying, and they're suffering from pathological mental deterioration because they're being told, just don't drink and go to meetings. the lady pointed out, it must have depth and weight. There has to be some depth and weight to the message that we carry to these people, or they end up on page 37, where it says, our sound reasoning failed to hold us in check. The insane idea won out. The insane idea will always win if I have no power between me and that alcohol. Thank you.
I'd like to point out that in the middle of this paragraph about Hank Parkhurst, when he talks about what turned it around for Hank, it says he accepted the plan outlined in this book. I heard a historian one time say, until 1939, when the book was written, they didn't have a program. I was like, well, of course they did. What do you think they wrote the book about? You know, they wrote the book about what they've been doing for the last 4 years. And you know, here Silkworth says he accepted the plan that they've outlined in this book. You know, the plan they've been working with, they outlined it, and they thought it was important to put it in book form. But that's going to be a consistent theme in the rest of this. You know, is accepted the plan, became sold on the ideas in this book. You know, read this book, read this book, read this book. It's the most consistent advice in here, you know, to employers, to wives, to everybody, family, everybody read this book. Well, I guess we're out of time. Great meeting, guys. It's great to see some new faces on here. This is from page 164 of the big book, is printed in as Bill sees it on page 331. We realize we know only a little. God will constantly disclose more to you and to us. Ask him in your morning meditation what you can do each day for the man who is still sick. The answers will come if your own house is in order, but you obviously cannot transmit something you haven't got. See to it that your relationship with him is right, and great events will come to pass for you and for countless others. This is the great fact for us. For the newcomer, abandon yourself to God as you understand God. Admit your faults to him and your fellows. Clear away the wreckage of your past. Give freely of what you find and join us. We shall be with you in the fellowship of the Spirit, and you will surely meet some of us as you trudge the road of happy destiny. May God bless you and keep you until then. Thanks for a great meeting. I want to congratulate anybody celebrating an anniversary this week. I want to welcome any visitors. And I just want to take a second to say that Larry and I had a very powerful conversation today about a guy in his home group that was a meeting maker and made a lot of meetings and found himself with 36 years thrust into this COVID lockdown and did not have the experience of being a big book step worker, and eventually took his life last week, and God bless him. But there's people, when we say there's people in trouble, I've heard about more people committing suicide than I have that died from this virus. So, you know, if you're not doing good, talk to somebody about it. It's not always going to feel like it does right now. And keep an eye out in your home group for the guy that's not laughing, and the guy that, you know, that doesn't think any of this stuff is really applicable right now, because there is a more powerful message available for that guy. We have a tradition here of closing with the 7th step prayer for anybody that care to join in. We're going to open all the mics and just do it all together.
Exactly.
I am now willing that you should have
every single defect of character.
every single defect of character in my you and my fellows. Thank the Lord and my fellows to our here and strength from here to their bid and next week meeting.